The Red Skull is perhaps one of the most iconic villains that Marvel has to offer from its vast pantheon, and though in the MCU he was only used as a principal antagonist in a single film, his resurgence in Infinity War and later Endgame has left longtime fans ecstatic about the Red Skull. The last we saw of him, he was acting as a watchful guardian of the Soul Stone, who the Russos refer to as a ghost of sorts, lacking the previous identity and determination of his previous life that we saw in Captain America: The First Avenger. While we've explored what likely happened when Steve Rogers arrived on Vormir to return the Soul Stone, very little speculation has gone towards analyzing what likely happened after this encounter. So stick with us today, watchers of the Marvel Multiverse, and let's explore some possibilities for what may have happened after the events of Endgame, and analyze whether or not the Red Skull is truly freed from his prison on Vormir. The first thing to remember is that there are two potential iterations of the Red Skull to follow. Upon returning the Soul Stone, Steve Rogers would have left the 2014 timeline and left the Red Skull to continue to guard the stone for another 4 years, as per the rule established by Avengers Endgame. The logic presented by the Ancient One states that upon returning the stones to their rightful places on the timeline would then repair itself and continue on its predestined and predetermined path, meaning that this iteration of the Red Skull is the same one who would later come into contact with Thanos and bear witness to his sacrifice of Gamora, though this has been the subject of much debate, especially given the recent release of Loki and the prospects of Nexus events creating splintering timelines that warrant the intervention of the TVA. The fact still remains that there is some version of the Red Skull in 2018 who welcomes Thanos and Gamora, and this is the version we will be following within this video. Whether this is the same iteration of the Red Skull or not is up for discussion, though there are disparities with this logic that seems to indicate otherwise. But we won't delve too deeply into that now, and simply limit the question to what would have theoretically happened to the 2018 version of Red Skull after the stone had been taken by Thanos. What's intriguing about this is during an Infinity War watch party, the Russo brothers actually were asked this very question. What happens with the Red Skull after Thanos inherits the Soul Stone from Vormir? Is he forced out to live the remainder of his existence on Vormir with nothing to guard? Well, the Russo brothers actually confirmed that this is not the case, and confirmed that now that the Soul Stone has actually been claimed by someone and a sacrifice has been made, the Red Skull is free to leave Vormir. But more than this, the Russo brothers also indicate that he himself is free to pursue the Infinity Stones if he so desires. Although the Russos claim that he is now free to leave Vormir, the logistics of how to do so are rather vague, and his motivations for what he might do upon finally being set free are completely unclear as well. The Russo brothers has left us of rather contradictory quotes, the first of which being as follows. Red Skull is free to leave Vormir, and he is also free to pursue his desire for an Infinity Stone, which seems to largely contradict some of their previous statements, including the one wherein they claim that he is no longer the same person, and though the memories of his past life still exist, there is no further motivation for power mongering that Johann Schmidt had, as he is no longer a violent, malicious individual. But for a full breakdown on this, see our video on what happened on Vormir when Cap returned the Soul Stone. The important thing to take away from this, however, is that these two comments by the Russos blatantly contradict one another. Not to mention that the Red Skull won't have any Infinity Stones to seek, seeing as Thanos atomized them in the opening minutes of Endgame. So how could Red Skull feasibly get off of Vormir? And if he did, what would he seek to do? The first issue is that it seems nigh impossible for the Red Skull to actually leave, as Vormir is described as a barren wasteland and a dominion of death at the very center of celestial existence. This seems to indicate that there is no level of technological advancement that could allow the Red Skull to escape Vormir by mechanical or scientific means. It is possible that his newfound abilities as a sort of phantom might allow him to escape through Ryder's interpretation, especially seeing as he was transformed by the Space Stone. Perhaps one of the most practical solutions would be to find a way into the TVA and use their headquarters to navigate space-time to his liking, as we are exploring different hypothetical opinions and options, none of which are canon. Although there is nothing on the planet that would allow him to escape immediately lead to our current knowledge. We know that both Hawkeye as well as Thanos were able to escape Vormir somehow, especially Hawkeye, who was not in possession of the Space Stone, meaning that escaping Vormir is not something that's impossible, as well as of course Captain America leaving, although he likely utilized the Pym particles. If the Red Skull was somehow able to escape, what would his next steps likely be? His sole purpose for the past 80 years has been to guard the Soul Stone and live in the shadow of his temptation, taunted by a power and a treasure that he cannot possess, as he calls it. If he is truly free as the Russos claim, and can find a way to get off of Vormir, then his next steps comes down to which of the two philosophies posed by the Russos would be taken into account by the next creative team to utilize the character. What's compelling about this though, is that at this point in time, the Red Skull is actually out there, and again, according to the Russos' interpretation, is free to leave and venture out from Vormir. The first option is that he still has the desire to collect an Infinity Stone, in which case his next course of action would likely be tracking down Thanos, as he knows that Thanos is already in possession of 4 of the 6 stones, and if he would like to continue his quests of claiming one of the stones for himself, this would be the best place to start. Upon finding out about the stone's destruction, however, it is possible that he may venture across the reaches of the galaxy within his grasp in search of the other powerful galactic artifacts that he is aware of. But this again depends on his access to transportation, and whether or not he is somehow inherently able to travel more effectively after having been changed by the Space Stone. If we choose to take the other comment as the basis for the next cinematic outing of Johann Schmidt, which we are not necessarily doing, just exploring, then he would likely be an aimless wanderer. The Russos, in this second contradictory claim, state that for all intents and purposes, he is a completely different person and entity, and if this was the case, he would likely not seek the power-mongering route again. So what is left for the Red Skull if he is now aimless without the Soul Stone and has the galaxy within his grasp? When this question was posed to actor Ross McQuand, who inherited the mantle from Hugo Weaving in Infinity War, he stated this: maybe the Red Skull wants to enact revenge, maybe he wants to keep his diabolical plan going, or maybe he doesn't care at all. I imagine when you're graced with infinite wisdom, you're also graced or cursed with infinite pain and suffering. So he's probably, I would imagine, on one level, he's over it. He doesn't need to conquer anybody, because he's unliving. This seems to leave the door open for either possibility depending on which creative producer and director decide to take up the Red Skull's story from here on. They could dissect his time on Vormir and delve into how it truly altered him as a character, which would in turn inform their decision for his future motivations. If he elects to take a more peaceful route, it's hard to say what he would do. Perhaps he would take up a position similar to the Watcher and simply serve as a silent overseer with minimal connection to the inhabitants of Earth or the universe as a whole. But whichever route he takes, it seems likely that the first stop beyond Vormir would be his homeworld yet again, allowing him to potentially come into contact with some of our favorite Earthbound MCU heroes, including the new Captain America and a very angry Hawkeye. But anyway, my friends, what do you think of these ideas? Where do you think the Red Skull is going to go after the events of Infinity War and Endgame, and how? That he will return to seek revenge, or that he will be more of a pacifist from here on out? Has his time on Vormir altered him, in near the presence of a powerful Infinity Stone, the Soul Stone, which does in fact have a special place among the others? Is his personality completely gone and been remade into a ghoul? Or is the Red Skull far, far worse than he even was in his mortal existence? Has he been granted new power and wisdom? And will he yet again return to plague the Marvel Cinematic Universe? As always, my friends, we would love to hear your thoughts and theories on this in the comments down below. As always, hit that subscribe button to assemble and join our team, and have a great day.